Greetings from Pray Tell Live here at the NPM National Convention in Washington, D.C. My name is Rita Ferrone, and for this interview, we have with us the leading candle maker of liturgical candles in the United States, Martin Marklin. We decided that we'd leave our booth at Pray Tell Live and come on over to his booth so that we could ask him a question about Paschal candles, which you make such lovely Paschal candles. And I can't say just lovely, but really vital Paschal candles. So tell our audience at Pray Tell, how do you make a Paschal candle? How do you figure out how to do this?
Well, there's generally multiple ways by which one makes a candle. One could overdip, one can mold, one can extrude. We take seriously the admonition that everything should bear the stamp of the artist on it. So we actually mold our cores, hand dip our candles into a large vat of wax that goes 8 feet into the ground, pull them through a sizing die for each one of our candles, and then skilled artists will carve out the designs by hand and fill the grooves with molten colored wax. So each one of our candles truly bears the mark of human hands.
Oh, gosh. Is this something that you don't recommend people try to do at home?
Well, you know, many people try at home and with some degree of success. And we fill the gaps to make sure that what you get from us is a beautiful candle that burns well. It's very difficult to work with beeswax. It's an organic substance. It's much more difficult than working with paraffin. So if you try to work with beeswax, just make sure you have the right wick and the right things that's going to make sure it burns well.
Well, you know, you brought up the beeswax, and I think it's one of my favorite topics is the bees and their role in making the wax, which was sung about in the Exultet. And I wondered if you had anything to say about those friendly bees, which are now suffering colony collapse disorder and all kinds of things.
I do. I have a great respect for the bees. You know, for 20, maybe 30 years, I've bought perhaps maybe 1 million pounds of beeswax in my career. So about 4 years ago, I actually got into keeping my own hives to see how these bees do what they do. And it's truly fascinating that this pillar of wax is made from the work of the bees and bears their stamp on it. It's a hive may have 60,000 bees in it, and you may get 100 pounds of honey at the course of a year, but when it's all said and done, you may only get 1 or 2 pounds of wax. So to think of the preciousness, the treasure of this substance really comes to light when one understands how the bee does what it does.
Mm-hmm. You know, I understand that in the third edition of the Roman Missal, it's not any longer supposed to be that you're supposed to carve the date in and the cross and all that stuff. Is it your experience that people are doing that? And do you have candles that are supposed to be self-carved?
That's a very touchy subject because most of our customers, the churches, want a candle that's fully adorned, and by fully adorned includes an alpha, an omega, a date, and the rosette, what we call rosettes, the nails, originally to hold the grains of incense into the candle. Now, while that is optional, the rite calls for the presider to trace or inscribe it on the candle. The candle doesn't have to have the markings decorated into them, although most of our customers they want to see it there.
No, because it's very striking when it is done in the full color way instead of something that is just done with a stylus, which is very faint and more difficult to see. So I guess I had one other question for you, Martin, unless you want to say more about that. What's your favorite Paschal candle design?
Well, they're like children, so it's very difficult to pick one or the other, but some do come to mind. I'm very fond of the new one this past year, which we call Dewfall, which has a design that's omnidirectional. It's very evocative.
Is that this one?
It is, and it's somewhat Matisse. I think it shows springs of hope, rivers of new life, so as our homage to the third translation, we appropriately call it Dewfall, which is significantly enigmatic. And I think there's some other ones. I love Eterna, which is here, which after a trip to the Holy Land in Beth Shean in a cave, I saw an image of a cross and some palm leaves, which was the Ursprung for this design. And Genesis, I each year when I design candles, I I swing the pendulum from something that's maybe more evocative to something that's a little bit more orthodox. Orthodox being very delineated with alpha, omega, date, cross, to things that are more, the default does not literally have a cross element, alpha, omega, but the design which wraps around the candle, which has no beginning and end, is itself an alpha and omega. The design itself is timeless, and so I think we accomplish that, what the alpha and omega, the beginning and the end, in the design itself. Additionally, that design has no front or back. So, once you put a cross on a candle, you're saying this is the front and this is the back. And then it becomes difficult where you put it in the assembly if the assembly is going to be seated all around it. So I actually prefer designs that wrap around the candle that are that are more omnidirectional and less pointed. Directional, I should say.
Great. Well, thank you, Martin. Here we are, Pray Tell Live at NPM Convention. Thank you all.